All right, let's begin. I would like to first of all ask you a few questions upfront, and let's see whether the two-way communication is happening correctly, and then we can start the topic of the day. If you are not already, subscribed to this channel on the YouTube, namely Inpods Faculty Commons, please feel free to subscribe to it. This video also will be uploaded on this channel later on. So initially, I'm going to ask you a few questions, maybe 5 to 6 questions, for me to kind of get into the rhythm and start the presentation of the topic of the day. Are you ready? You can actually post your answers in the comment box, question box, and then I will actually get an insight into what exactly you're thinking about these questions. So should I go ahead with asking you the questions? All right. So here is the first question. I would like all of you to respond to this question. So if you had a superpower, what would it be? Is the question. Yeah, keep pouring your answers. All right. Yes. Some of you have said you would like to fly, spreading happiness. Awesome. That's a nice response. To make all happy. All right. Yeah. So thank you very much for those responses. Let me go to the next question now. What would be the title of your autobiography be? Yeah, go ahead. Respond. What would be the title of your autobiography be? Anyone? Yeah, life well spent. Awesome. Ability to change people's behavior and attitude. Man who loved the nature. Journey is my goal. Me and my truth. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the overwhelming responses. I'm going to ask the next question is, what is a food you like but everyone else hates? Rasam oats? Yeah, nothing like that. Jackfruit depends on one's taste. Bitter gold. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Bottle gold. Sweet milk. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. One more question. What would be your dream house? On the seashore or lakeshore? On the top of the hill? Penthouse? Around the nature? Right. In the sky. Flying house. Awesome. Next is, what's your favorite magical or mythological animal? A dog? Yeah, quite a few are saying dog, tiger, horse, Garuda. Garuda, yeah. That's awesome. Cow, absolutely. Right. So Thank you very much. Actually, I would like to skip these other questions and now go to the topic of the day. Thanks a lot for your responses. I enjoyed that interaction. So today we are going to discuss outcomes focused questions. This is a part of the FDP program that I typically conduct um, online. I had done a series of 5 sessions in the past, which was delivered online completely. But nowadays, many universities have started inviting me to the campus, and now because of the kind of normalization of I would say there is no fear of traveling now. We believe that the pandemic is over, so in-person kind of offline on the campus FDPs are being delivered by me these days, and I cover this topic in those FDP programs. So this is a kind of very focused discussion that we are going to have. I'm going to wait, take a pause, at a logical stage during our discussions, and address questions if any. So please feel free to post your questions in the question box. I don't typically prefer, having a one-on-one discussion by unmuting the mic, because it takes a lot of time actually to kind of get the person to talk. As many times there is a technical problem or mic is not working, it's not audible. So I prefer that you type your questions in the question box. It is very convenient also for me to then read out and answer your questions. So here the main topic that the theme or the kind of the main uh, problem area that I'm going to address in this session is how to align the questions with the outcomes and the instructions. So the alignment of these three major elements: the question, outcomes, and instructions. Instructions means the way the teacher wants to teach, the methodology of the teaching. It could be with the help of some teaching aids or some slides like this, or taking the students to the kind of field and then show them something, or it could be experiential learning. Any pedagogy that you would like to use to convey your idea to the students could be the instruction, and this instruction has to be aligned with the outcomes that you want to achieve. And to measure whether or not the outcomes are being achieved, we have to ask the questions. So that's why questions, outcomes, and the instructions have to be aligned, and that is the point here. What if the one of these three things is misaligned with each other? What happens? Let's see that. If the questions are misaligned with the learning outcomes or the instruction strategies, it can undermine both the student's motivation and the learning. Right? For example, outcome is learning to apply analytical skills, and so students were supposed to apply the analytical skills. That was the outcome the teacher wanted to achieve. But the question that the teacher asked was measuring only the factual recall. So factual recall is lower order thinking skill, and the teaching was done at the level of apply. So what happened here? The obviously the objective was to for the students to learn to apply analytical skills, but the question measures only the factual recall. Consequently, the students hone their analytical skills and frustrated that the exam does not measure what they learned. This is a typical example of misalignment. Second example of the misalignment is that instruction strategies, the teaching was done uh, only to summarize the arguments of the different authors. That was the goal there. So the teaching was done, and then the question that was asked was testing the ability of the students to compare and the critique the arguments of different authors. So this was not taught at all, but the question is assessing the student to be able to compare and critique. So in this case, obviously, students will fail to respond to the question, and you will have false negatives because most of the student will not be able to answer that question. In the earlier case, many students will be able to answer that question because it was assessing only factual recall, and hence you will have false positives. So the attainment computation that you do is not actually the right attainment that you um, get there because of the misalignment between the questions, instruction strategies, and the outcomes that you are trying to measure. So to solve this problem, I have designed some methodology which I would like to share with all of you. There is one Excel sheet that you will be able to download from the this way go to webinar. If you go to handouts, there is a handout section on the menu bar. I don't know how it will work for those who are using mobile phones, but it will be a good idea if you switch to the laptop because I would like you to download this Excel sheet and start using that as we go through this presentation. I'm pretty sure that you'll be able to come out with a very good model of which I am calling as course blueprint, and you will have very good idea of how to avoid the misalignment between the outcomes, instructions, and the questions. And this is the template that I have given you. You can please download it. There is a question, by the way, I would like to address here. Professor Anil Kumar has asked, how can student be given the points credits for posing the intelligent, relevant questions? Any process used for giving such credits? It is actually a good question. Let me address it little later because I'm pretty sure that I will be able to show you how this can happen. A credit to the given to the students, and I mean, if you are using adaptive kind of learning and methodology, then these things are possible. So yeah, I believe that you could access the handout, namely assignment of course blueprint, and if you could download that and keep it ready handy, you can actually use it as we go through this presentation and come out with your model which is applicable to your course. So automatically you will be able to find out how to avoid the misalignment of instructions, outcomes, and assessments. So what techniques and frameworks we can develop here is something that we are going to discuss. So I'm going to actually create a pathway to, first of all, identify the course outcomes and then map the questions also to these course outcomes. The It begins at the content of the course. So, and we will be able to build a course blueprint at the end of this webinar. So, we will identify the desired cognitive levels for the learning of the content. So, how it goes is we will think about the course that you teach, and we will think about how you can break it down into subtopics. We'll think about how to map these subtopics to the knowledge dimensions. And then the most critical part of our developing this model is to think about how to identify the desired cognitive levels for the learning of this content. Who will tell us that? Right? Is there any model? Is there any kind of ready-made solution that is available to think about the desired cognitive levels? First of all, what is desired cognitive level is also something that we will cover, and then we will be able to build our model, because this model has to address both parts of the education process, that is teaching as well as the learning process. So this the uh, so both the stakeholders in this process of education have to be considered, and we have to build a model, using these expectations of both the stakeholders. And then we can use this model to design the course outcomes. Once we design the course outcomes, we will know how to ask the questions to measure those outcomes. So that is the general idea. uh, yeah, so the famous no name given, that is kind of known, is Bloom's taxonomy, which is actually nothing but the cognitive levels of the students. So let's look at the knowledge dimension. I'm pretty sure that all of you must have already, kind of been acquainted with this terminology and the description of each of the knowledge dimensions. This is something that is extremely important concept that we have to think about when we are thinking about what outcomes we have to design and what questions have to be designed accordingly. So there are four dimensions of the knowledge. One is factual, which is basically um, nothing but some discrete isolated content elements, terminologies, knowledge of the specific details and the elements. So this the moment I finish this, describing this slide, that will be actually the process of delivering the factual and the conceptual knowledge to all of you. And because I am trying to build some kind of discrete isolated elements of the knowledge I am delivering, and then in addition to that, I'm also trying to uh, build some connectivity between these isolated knowledge contents. And once we are able to connect these chunks or the isolated elements, it will form a concept. So conceptual knowledge comprises classification and the categories, principles and the generalization, theories, models, structures of the concept. So the course blueprint is a model, right? The moment you use that model, it will become procedural knowledge. But when in the beginning of the application of this course blueprint model, you are likely to follow what I'm showing you on the screen. So that is a first step of your competence. Progressively, you will be able to do it yourself, and also then step by step, one will grow further into the competency scale, and then it will become a natural process to everybody. Initially, I have seen that those who try to apply it, they miss on identifying the right keywords belonging to those cognitive levels. There is a typical mismatch in knowledge dimensions and the desired cognitive levels and the action verbs in the desired cognitive levels. And this is basically and because it is not yet practiced a lot. Once it is practiced, obviously these kind of issues get eliminated, and then we say that now it is kind of internalized fully, and precision is achieved now by the learner, and it becomes the habit. So that becomes the procedural knowledge. And when we talk about the metacognitive knowledge levels, it is about the strategic knowledge about the cognitive task. So when you would design this course blueprint knowledge, there is a step which is related to desired cognitive level. That is actually it requires strategic knowledge. Uh, and there are two kind of stages in the cognitive knowledge when you deliver this knowledge to the students. So there it is essentially the how one learns is the first level. So recognizing how I learn is the first step in the metacognitive knowledge. And the second stage is regulation of that learning. So in the second stage, once the learning is done, maybe with the help of watching a video, some of the different types of intelligences, you must have already aware of those, and then based on that a human being learns. Once it is learned, the regulation of that learning is the second stage. So if we are giving the opportunity for the students to think about how they learn, uh, analyzing, helping them to analyze how they learn, and then using the instruction strategies which are closer to what they prefer to be in the situation of when they learn. These are the kind of knowledge dimensions related to cognitive level, dimension. So when you are thinking about whether I am delivering any kind of metacognitive knowledge, then those the realization of that may happen if you think about, are am I helping the student to know how they are going to learn it, what their preferences are, and then am I helping them to how to show how to regulate their this learning process later on, and that will help you to kind of build their competence related to metacognitive knowledge. So these are primarily the four knowledge dimensions which we are going to think about, and try to identify what subtopics of my your course is related to, either the subtopics in group are related to a knowledge dimension, or there is an independent subtopic which is large enough as a knowledge chunk which can be mapped to a knowledge dimension. So typically you may find mappings of the subtopics with the knowledge dimensions in this manner. At the right side, I have given this description that we have already seen on the previous slide. So there is no, this is just to give you kind of reference, quick reference. I don't know whether if you are using a mobile device, how is it possible for you to read it out? But yeah, I'm pretty sure that you'll be able to make you make use of your mobile device to understand this text here. So this you may have multiple subtopics. Obviously, then you will have multiple knowledge dimensions here. I'm just giving you some examples here like this. So once you do that, um, the next step is I'm showing you here some examples, real life examples. So factual means here in this case, introduction to databases and characteristics of database approach. This could be factual knowledge dimension. Conceptual could be introduction to data models, hierarchical models. So it is introduction to the model. So I can say that it is conceptual knowledge. Procedural may have database design process, relational algebra operations from set theory, recovery techniques, and dealing with the deadlocks could be the example of metacognitive, because you require kind of some strategic knowledge, some insight into uh, how to avoid those deadlocks. So this is metacognitive knowledge that I can say, and you can help the students to build some strategies here, on how to avoid the deadlock. So already they know procedural knowledge, but we have to take them further to the next level. If you believe that some of these topics here requires explaining those the students how to regulate their learning process. So this is about the knowledge dimensions that you can identify. I'm just going to now transpose this a little bit, and first of all, I'm just going to show you once again the same depiction in a different manner. So you can group these subtopics in this manner from various units of your course. You may be able to identify whether there are any how these subtopics are related to various knowledge dimensions. So generally, you'll find mapping like this. Okay, I will move to the next. I have just flipped this, transposed this, this same diagram chart. I'm showing you three units. There are subtopics here, and these are the knowledge dimensions associated with these subtopics. Okay, I have simplified this model to a great extent to avoid confusions, obviously. But I know that this model can become very complex if you apply, the more and more thinking to this model. It will become very complex. I know that, but I'm trying to keep this at a very basic level. But doesn't mean that I don't kind of address. I don't recognize the complexity involved here. Doesn't mean that. I just wanted to keep it at the basic level. There is a couple of questions, I guess. I will address those. There is a question by Dr. Rupa. What is meant by the competency of a subject, and further to a subtopic? Uh, actually, competency is not related directly to the subject, but it is the outcome that you want to achieve. Competency is a level of that, let's say, for in the typically in the uh, if I would answer your question, I might jump a few steps here in my presentation, but let me still do it. The competency is typically the word used for the purpose of demonstrating the level of the skills the person has achieved in the procedural knowledge generally. But if you look at the uh, scientific definition of the competency, it is an ability to know when to use what skill, right? That is a competency. You know hundred things, but you know when to use which one, looking at the situation, right? And that is a competence. That is a scientific definition of explanation of the term competency. But generally, in the process of the learning, there are three learning domains. One is cognitive domain, second is psychomotor, and third is affective domain. Typically, in the case of psychomotor domain, competency levels is a scale used to measure the level of competency. The example which I was quoting earlier about the course blueprint, how step by step this procedural knowledge can go upwards, is exactly the scale I was referring to, which is called as the competency scale. But it is not directly related with the subject or the subtopics. It is actually the measure of the level in your learning process of the topics. So it is not directly related with the topic itself. It is a measurement of the learning process of the topics that you are delivering. That is a explanation I can give you. So let's move on. Thanks for asking that nice question. So here we have this model that is being built, and I believe that this is clear to everybody, right? I'm moving further. This is an example of real life content I have seen. Desirable properties of the transaction could be factual, characterizing schedules, concurrency control, dealing with the deadlock. So this is a real life example of this chart that we are developing. Another example, this is also is a nice one. Here you can see that this is the psychoanalytic perspective is the unit 2. Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory is a conceptual knowledge. Anxiety and defense mechanisms is a factual and a mix of factual and conceptual knowledge. Critiquing is a mix of procedural and metacognitive knowledge. So that's the way you can actually identify the knowledge dimensions. So now I would like you to download the handout and start updating it in the parallel to this discussion. Is that fine? Right. So can you please respond to me? if you are able to find that Excel sheet in your course handout, have you downloaded it? Would you mind responding? All right. Yeah. Thank you so much for the responses. So now please use that as we go ahead. In the meantime, if you have any questions, please keep writing those questions. So we'll go further now. We have to build this model further. What we have done so far, that we talked about our course, we talked about what subtopics we teach, and we then mapped the knowledge dimensions. We so far have been talking about teaching process. Now we are going to think about the learning process. So second, the other side of the teacher is the student, and we have to see how the student is going to learn all these knowledge packets which we are delivering, which belong to various knowledge dimensions, and how each of these packets are being learned by the students through this process of cognition. Typically, 6 steps are uh, considered to be the steps involved into the learning process of the students, and it is called as cognitive process. It falls into cognitive domain of the learning. And the other term that is used to designate this is Bloom's taxonomy, because Dr. Benjamin Bloom and his team uh, invented these 6 steps, and that's the reason this is famously known as Bloom's taxonomy. However, we have to understand that this is actually the cognitive process of learning. Do you believe that when the learning happens, this learning goes through these steps serially, or there is a possibility of jumping to the next level without achieving the previous level to that? Is that possible, do you think? And what could be those levels if you believe that yes, that is possible? By the way, a couple of professors mentioned that there is no access to this handout which I am mentioning. Actually, this access is given to all. That's the reason some of the professors have mentioned that they have received it. So if you look at the menu bar of this go to webinar, at the bottom of your menu bar, you will see handouts as a menu. And if you open that, expand it, you will find a link to the Excel sheet, which will help you to get it. That's it. I mean, the access is given to everyone. Yeah. So actually, am I coming back to my question? So do you believe that the student goes through these steps serially, or it requires sometimes a jumping is possible to the next level without achieving the previous one? Dr. Anil says that jumping to create, often called as learning by doing. Uh, One more response says that it is always happen. Always happens serially. Yeah, I mean, but if you think about it carefully, you will realize that many times jumping is possible actually, and many times, I mean, you if you just think about your own steps, many times, if you learn something, you want to directly apply it, and then your understanding improves actually, because this you said many times this happens. Many times after understanding, you may analyze something, and then by reading some others material, and then you probably know how it could be applied, but it's a faint idea that you get. but your analysis helps you to know how to apply. Many people don't like to apply anything, they just directly go to analysis. So there is a jumping possible. You have to, and that happens to all human beings. So this should be taken with the pinch of salt. That okay, every time the learning will happen serially like this. It is not possible actually. But theoretically, this is how the learning happens. So when we deliver some knowledge as a teacher who is delivering the knowledge which is mapped to these knowledge dimensions, the teaching will result into learning, and the learning will go through these steps. That's what we are trying to say here. And now everybody must be aware of what is remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. Generally, these are the order in which the student is going to go through and achieve the higher order thinking skills. Uh, and it is always called as thinking skills, right? Not doing things. Doing skills, application is doing it, but it is always called as thinking skills because it is part of the cognitive domain, learning process. So now we have to think about why we ask the question. Essentially, traditionally, to pass or fail the student, to give the feedback to the student that your learning is incomplete, your marks are so many, and as the passing threshold is 35% and above, then you either you have got the second class, first class, or distinction is the kind of categorization we do, and that is the reason the exams are conducted. In the outcomes based education, this concept has no hold here. What the purpose of asking any question is actually finding out whether the desired level of cognition is achieved by the student. So what I mean by that is that if you are teaching factual knowledge and you are expected to see whether the students, most of the students have been able to understand what you have taught, because that is the desired level of cognition here, understand. It could have been desired level of cognition could have been remember also, or it could have been apply also for this factual knowledge which I am teaching. Then who tells me as a teacher what the desired level of cognition should be for the course that I am teaching and for the knowledge that I am delivering right now? So somebody will have to tell that. This may not be the teacher herself. It could be somebody who is program director or the course coordinator or the person who teaches himself or herself will be the person of authority who can define, who may have given the role of defining what should be the desired level of cognition for these subtopics that you are teaching. If you are teaching, let's say, conceptual knowledge, and then desired level of cognition was supposed to be applied, and that's the reason you will ask the question to see whether most of the students are have achieved the apply level. So this most of the student is very important term here, right? Which I'm using because we can never achieve 100% of the student going to that level. It is an impossible task. So there will be some rubric which will be applicable here. So you may have, let's say, a goal of at least seeing 40% of your students in apply. When you teach conceptual knowledge, you want to see at least 40% student here, some of them in understand level, some of them in remember level, and maybe out of 60, one or two people, students, I have never understood anything, or they were absent. You don't know whether they have, they would have learned it or not. So, what is the distribution of the students in these categories, in these steps, is a rubric that also has to be designed by somebody and given to the teacher. So it's not only the desired level of cognition, but when you measure the student performance, it has to be compared with some rubric which is a smart goal given to the student teacher. uh, Otherwise it will become impossible, then nobody will have any motivation to achieve such impossible goals, right? So there has to be a practical smart goal given to the teachers to see whether the learning is effective. So these are the two important questions, the teachers themselves may not know what is the desired level of cognition expected here when I teach something. And we have to now uh, take this as a question for ourselves and try to think whether when you stand in the classroom and deliver some topic tomorrow, if you think about what learning outcomes I am trying to measure and what is the desired level of cognition I want the students to be at when I cover this subtopic here, that will definitely change the perspective in the way you think about outcomes based education generally. All right. So let's look at carefully about look at the cognitive process, and it begins at the remember level, right? The first step is remembering something, and hence the remembering is called as its retention level. It corresponds to test of retention, whereas the other five categories correspond to test of transfer. So if remembering is weak, the transfer of the knowledge will be weak. That is why, in my opinion, you may disagree with this, but in my opinion, remembering is the most important step in the cognition. So many times, if you find that the students are unable to respond to your questions, that is mainly because of their inability to remember that. So that's why instruction design has to be extremely catchy, so that most of the students will be able to remember what you are teaching, and then their transfer of that knowledge will be easy. So I can explain this by giving one more example. Uh, Traditionally or generally, we say that lower order thinking skill related questions are uh, not so important, and we have to push the students towards the higher order thinking skill. That is generally the right approach. It doesn't mean that the lower order thinking skills are not important. They are equally important. In fact, the remembering is the most important thing step, and that is why our it is important for us to continuously see whether the students are able to recall the knowledge that we are teaching to them. And that is why the formative assessments are becoming have to become more important than the summative one, because formative assessment will give not only the feedback about whether the students are achieving the desired level of cognition, but also students themselves will know whether their learning process is going in the right direction, and that is a metacognition that they will achieve, whether they are learning right appropriately. And regulation is something that is different. They will be able to apply that when they start applying that knowledge, but are they able to retain it, first of all, is the big question. So that's why, in my opinion, desired level of cognition must always consider how they are retaining the knowledge and how they are transferring the knowledge. This is something that is more important than thinking about lower order and higher order thinking skills. Any questions so far? Yes. Any questions so far? No, no problem. Thank you. So there are some in the comments about yes that they agree with my thoughts, and they will keep it in mind. Thank you so much for the confirmation. So I'm going ahead now. So generally, what we believe when you look at the span of the whole graduation process, right from the first day of the student in the college to the last day in the college. We take them from foundational level courses to then application of the knowledge, and then the exposure to some more complex situations by involving them into internships or project based learning, experiential learning, sending them to the the ground, I mean for the to the outside of the world, outside the campus, making them conduct some events for the college, or make them participate in the tough competitions, things like that. So you want to build kind of overall personality of the students, and hence you don't do that immediately in the first year. You help them kind of grow further, and that is the reason what we believe generally is that as the students go further in their during the through their graduation process, we want to kind of ask, involve them into more and more applying, analyzing, evaluate, and creating kind of stages, and less and less into remember and understand level situations. However, you can't eliminate that those questions altogether. You have to have remember level questions to help them recall all the time the knowledge that they are going to incrementally learn over a period of time. So we believe generally that psychomotor and metacognitive tasks should be more and more given to them, and less just the theory work, and kind of sitting, making them sit in the classroom and just listen to various topics. So at the same time, uh, we have to add more and more psychomotor and metacognitive tasks given to them. So that is generally the idea, direction, and we are going to use this concept in thinking about whether this is a idea that is useful for us to think about what should be the desired level of cognition. So, for example, a teacher who is teaching the course somewhere here in the beginning of the graduation process, so naturally the expectation at that time are not that high, right? You may want to the student to be at lower levels of their psychomotor skills or metacognitive skills or the learning process. You are not taking them directly to analysis. You want them to remember, apply something at that time, right? And but some a teacher who is teaching the course somewhere here, let's say in the fourth or fifth year, I'm sorry, the semester, then naturally the expectation is higher. The application also requires them to take not only just the imitation, I mean just following the teacher, but you want them to do something without any supervision, right? Apply their learning in isolation and come out with the result. So that is the expectation that you have as if you are teaching at the later stages of the graduation process. So accordingly, the desired level of cognition can be calibrated by the person who is thinking about the program designing, and then uh, this will get regulated properly, governed properly. This in the sense identifying the desired level of cognition for a course which is taught in the first semester, second semester. If you compare that with a course in fourth or fifth semester, then naturally the desired level of cognitions will have to be kind of calibrated according to the expectation that you want the student to be at. Generally, we talk about the cognitive process, which is part of the three knowledge processes, knowledge domains. First domain is cognitive domain, second domain is psychomotor domain, and the third domain is affective domain, as per the theory written by these educationists. So far, nobody has challenged it significantly, but this is what the theory is right now. So, what happens is that in our day-to-day teaching learning, we only think about Bloom's taxonomy. But Bloom's taxonomy doesn't address everything about the learning process. It actually has hidden dimensions of the psychomotor domain somewhere there. So when originally the team of Bloom's, Benjamin Bloom and Anderson, Krathwohl, and I think the couple of them, others also were there, part of that team, when they invented the cognitive domain, and also they kind of defined the affective domain at that time. They did not define the psychomotor domain. It was not a complete study actually, which was later on added by many other educationists, and then Anderson Cathall themselves, this team also. But at that time, Mr. Benjamin Bloom wasn't there at that time. Psychomotor domain related such steps are defined by quite a few educationists also. So this is actually degree of competence in performing a skill is something that is associated with psychomotor domain, right? So these two domains are actually directly related with the teaching process, and there is the metacognitive knowledge dimension or affective domain is actually everywhere. You cannot separate it out. Right from the day one of the student in their classroom, first session, the cognitive metacognitive process begins actually, and teacher can take very conscious efforts in identifying the opportunities to build the abilities in the students to know how they have to learn something which you are going to teach, and how they can regulate their learning later on. So for example, if you want to ask a question, if let's say this is a day one of your course, it's the first session, and in front of you, let's say 50 students are sitting, and so it's a good attendance that day, fortunately. And then you ask the question that how you explain them the syllabus, and you ask a question about how they think they will be able to manage their studies, what their strategy would be, right? They may not have any clues, so you may want to give some ideas how they should learn and regulate their learning. So you are actually then making them think about what strategies they should use in their learning process. Then after a couple of sessions, you may want to ask them whether or not they are able to build their own strategies now, how they will learn your course, and what those strategies could be. Right? Are those strategies helping you to learn better? Right? Did you fine tune your earlier thoughts about how you're going to learn? So these are the kind of questions, and if you give specifically an exercise to them related to this, which will help them to respond to you accordingly, and they will be able to learn how they have to learn your course. And this learning process could be different for different courses. So the building this ability is building the affective domain related skills in the students. That's what my contention is, and presentation to you, submission to you all here. Now, we also, when we talk about the apply, analyze, evaluate, and create, especially these four levels here, has this hidden dimension, and we have to recognize this. So, when you are designing the activities or designing the questions, you have to think about at what level of application you want the student to be at the precision level, or at the manipulation level, or at imitation level, or at naturalization level. What is your expectation? Somebody will have to tell that to the teachers if they themselves are not supposed to make that call, but somebody has to tell them, if not the student teachers themselves. And if it is not being communicated, I don't believe that the misalignment between the instruction outcomes and the assessment is going to be eliminated. And that is the reason this is a process that we are talking about is so powerful that at least you will be able to solve this problem for your own course, right? And then somebody will have to think about the overall program, uh, and that person also will have to then recognize the importance of thinking about it, how to avoid the misalignment between the instructions, outcomes, and the assessments, and then the whole program will get harmonious input about how to mm, calibrate the overall expectations from the students learning. Any questions so far? No questions? Okay. All right. So this is the chart which I have shown to you, is available on the net. I have given the credit also that this is a Deus Psychomotor domain. This is all from the Wikipedia I have taken. So you will be able to, let's read out this. Second stage, manipulation. Reproduce activity from the instructions. And examples of activities or demonstration or evidence of learning. Carry out task from written or verbal instructions. So in this case, that the student is not watching the teacher or the trainer and repeating the action. Here the student is, directly following some written or verbal instructions. So the kind of action verbs you can use to design the activity or design the questions are given here: recreate, build, perform, execute, or and implement. If you take the students to the next level, precision, execute skill reliably, independent of the help. So these instructions are also taken out. And perform the task activity with expertise and high quality without assistance or instructions, able to demonstrate an activity to other learners also. Demonstrate, complete, show, perfect, calibrate, control, and practice. So in this case, even the instruction manual, whatever is given, verbal instructions are also not there. Everything is removed, and then student should be able to recall the steps to be performed and show, demonstrate that they are able to do it. In medical education or maybe dental education, I think there is a skill certification that is required to be achieved by the students of health sciences. And imagine a medical college student who doesn't know how to measure the blood pressure, right? That kind of student cannot be an MBBS graduate. So this certification of the skills is so serious work there, that they have to show the steps involved into those competencies that they have to demonstrate, and the teacher has to watch it and see whether those steps are performed correctly by the student, and accordingly the certification is given for that particular skill. And that is called as, there are more than 50 to 60 such skills to be certified by the teacher for each and every student over a period of their graduation process. And it is taken that kind of seriously. In other um, kind of branches like engineering or non-engineering, I don't think that there is such skill certification concept over there, right? And it is mandatory for all the students in MBBS to achieve those skills, right? If you can't achieve it in, well, first attempt, another attempt is given, but there is a limit to the attempts also, obviously, I guess. And if the student is not able to achieve the certification, then the further progress is stopped. That's what I understand. I may be wrong, but that's the process I understand is valid. So these are the dimensions that we have to understand are hidden there in the cognitive process of the students, and that belongs to psychomotor domain. There is a skills uh, kind of scale of the skills that the student has to achieve through those steps. Um, so I'm going to now go to the next category here, which is cognitive metacognitive knowledge. Again, here there is a kind of lower to higher order receiving. Right now, I'm this is a kind of monologue that I'm in exchanging some thoughts with you, but occasionally I'm asking the questions to you. But generally, it is a process of receiving. The second stage is responding to my questions. Some of you are writing your messages there. So that is a step of responding in the metacognitive knowledge. Valuing something is about attaching the value and expressing personal opinions. So you will have your own, you will build your own opinions, and you will be able to share those. Challenge me. That hey, you probably require this to be fine tuned. Why? Because these are the reasons behind it. So that's kind of stage occurs over a period of time. So that is the metacognitive knowledge dimension that we can refer to here. And this is something that you don't have to teach separately. It can become a part of your day-to-day teaching learning, and that's the reason it is assumed to be there all everywhere. And it is basically, if you're asking 50 to 60 questions in one semester with various assessments of formative and summative kind of nature, then at least 10, 15, 20% of the questions should be converted such a way that it triggers a thought process in the student's mind, beyond just recall, beyond just remembering, beyond just applying. There could be some questions which will challenge their learning and make them think about their learning process. Are they learning it correctly? What are the gaps in my learning? Is the analysis that is triggered there in the mind, rather than just recall and then write it and that's it, over. So that some of the questions could be changed such a way that it triggers a thought process in the student's mind about, are they able to learn efficiently? Are they able to regulate their learning efficiently? And that's the kind of conversion of the questions is required to assess and the metacognitive knowledge dimensions. So now, if you look at uh, these knowledge dimensions, the factual, conceptual, procedural, and metacognitive, these are the keywords now, depending upon uh, the level at which you want the student to be at. Initially, as I said, you may want, if you're teaching factual knowledge, you may be able to you are okay with them to achieve the level of define, describe, little later identify, explain. As they go further in their graduation process, you want them to then achieve higher levels of the cognitions here. Likewise, if you are teaching the procedural skills, you want them to follow, imitate, right, initially, then to take them to integrate, solve, design, manage later on, and when they become they go to the precision level or beyond that. And when it comes to metacognitive knowledge, you want them to respond initially, take participation, voluntarily show the their voluntary involvement in something, uh, ask them to debate, justify, organize something, some events or something like that, or right, internalize or influence somebody else to follow something. So that these are the levels through you want the students to be taken to. So as we have discussed, right, the metacognitive level could be mixed with the other two dimensions, and you may kind of then think only about in the sense, when you are thinking about the factual and conceptual and procedural knowledge, if you add the dimension or the concept of how to build the abilities of the students to be more responsive, or go through these metacognitive levels, then you can mix those keywords into this whole two main major dimensions of the knowledge, and then uh, come out with a desired level of cognitions that you want them to achieve. Any questions so far? Now we are moving towards the last uh, kind of a topic of the session. We started at around around 60 minutes ago. We started this. We have another 25 minutes to go, and we will be now entering into most important part of this webinar. So please pay attention. If you have Any questions, please get those clarified right away. Any questions? Right, okay. No questions so far. So I'm going to use these charts. Uh, there will be six charts, and these charts will be useful for us to uh, arrive at the desired cognitive levels. So this is a category. Remember, cognitive process and action verbs are given here. So this is a cognitive process within this category, recognizing and recalling, and there are some action verbs given here, which gives us the direction to define the course outcomes as well as design the questions. Both. There are two purposes of these action verbs. And there are the assignment formats which are suggested here. That if you are expecting the student to be at remember level of cognition, then what is the cognitive process you want to assess? Recognizing, are they able to recognize something? Then you can actually design the questions which can be objective type of questions. If you are expecting the student to recall something, then the questions will be depending on the extent to providing the hints. If you are able to provide some hints and then ask the question, so that it helps them recall something, right? And then that's the kind of questions you may be able to design here, depending upon what cognitive process you are assessing. So cognitive process is a learning process of the students. Have they been able to recognize something? Are they be able to recall something? Is something that you are trying to assess. So now coming to our blueprint, now you can actually start using the Excel sheet that you have downloaded. If you can actually use only one row here for your current work along with this presentation. You don't have to build all other subtopics or units. It's not desired. Um, but if you want to, you can obviously do that. So unit has some subtopics. I want some of these two topics, actually, some of these subtopics are at the factual level, some of these topics are at the conceptual level. The topics which are at the factual level, I wanted the student to be at remember level. So that's the reason I'm bringing out this chart here. I want the student to, let's say, I want to now choose one of these two cognitive processes. So I want them to at recall level, and then I have to identify what action verb I would like to use here. Now, depending upon the vastness or the complexity of this topic, I may choose one or multiple action verbs from this, because one may not be sufficient. There could be multiple ones, but here to keep this model at the very basic level, I have chosen only one. So define is the keyword which I have used here to complete this alignment. So these are the topics which are of factual knowledge dimension. I want the student to be able to remember. I want to use cognitive process as recall, and action verbs are defined. That's how actually I want to now build this model further. What is the second here? So there are other factual knowledge dimensions there. Here I will use the same table here, or depending upon whether I want them to be at remember level or not, because this factual may I want them to be, let's say, at apply level also. So that according to the expected level of cognition, I will use these charts to define how I want the student to learn. Now, in all the cases where I wanted the student to reach the understand level, this is a chart that comes in picture. So wherever there is a understand level of desired level of cognition as understand, I will use this chart to define what I want there. Right. So this is generally how I will use this um, table to come out with cognitive process, and the action verbs associated with it. There are a couple of questions which I would like to address now. Dr. Shipra Singh has asked, in a new working paper of NAC, there are some arguments against the focus on Bloom's taxonomy. Would you like to comment? Actually, I don't know what those arguments are, but I believe that this Bloom's taxonomy is a very important dimension to consider when you are thinking about implementing outcomes-based education and measuring the outcomes, designing the questions to measure those outcomes. If you are uh, implementing the OB in its, uh, it's a in the real sense, to achieve the spirit of it, then unless and until you think about the cognitive process, it is not possible. Even generally, actually, forget about OB. Generally, it is not possible for you to assess the students to whether or not to see whether or not they are achieving the desired level of cognition. This is a basic process of teaching and learning, in my opinion. So I don't know what those arguments are, so I am not able to comment on it. But this is generally what my thought process is. One teacher has asked, I joined late, can you send the Excel sheet again? So actually, if you go to your menu bar of go to webinar, at the bottom of that, you will find one handouts menu. Expand that, and you will find this Excel sheet link given there. You please download it. Thank you. Dr. Anil Kumar asks, are these guidelines for expectation of percentage of the students achieve different level of learning? No, there are no guidelines as such. It is entirely the discretion of the program designer, uh, who is supposed to design the curriculum. So it's a part of the curriculum design. So this is the kind of rubric that you will have to design based on what you want to achieve the student to be at. And could be a rationale behind how you look at it. I actually, but for that, it will be a complete diversion, and we will lose the focus on this current topic. And that's the reason I will not be able to answer your question the way I would have generally liked to answer that. Professor Shipra has asked another thing. They are okay. She said that they are talking about considering an alternative and expandable framework for the assessment. Actually, okay, again, I mean, if you want to have alternate mechanism, what it could be, it is left to the teachers to think about it. If they believe that this is the right method of thinking about cognitive domain, psychomotor domain, and affective domain, then there is no need of thinking about anything else. If you want to research, doing some research and invent something more to it and take a different stand, absolutely fine actually, but it requires a lot of research, and then after the research, due research, these things are possible. Immediately going to adopting and taking a stand may not be possible, in my opinion. So they have given you the freedom to choose what model you want to use to assess the learning process. So I think they are not arguing about the whether Bloom's taxonomy is valid or not. They are giving you the freedom to choose the way you want to measure the effectiveness of your teaching and learning. uh, Yes, so there are certain comments about other fellow participants that they agree with the comment made by me about the importance of Bloom's taxonomy. Now, there is one more comment by Professor Radhika here that certain verbs overlap with two cognitive. Absolutely. So, only thing is the meaning attached to that is little different. So that is the reason actually we have to study these three knowledge dimensions very deeply and understand the meaning of each verb. It is different when it is create in psychomotor domain and create in cognitive domain. It will carry different meaning, and that is something that we have to understand and design the questions accordingly. So coming back to my this model that I am developing, So as I mentioned to you, I use this table here to define what cognitive processes I want to assess, and what action verbs I want to use to design course outcomes and the questions both. So once I build this model step by step, I don't have to now take you in detail, but you got the idea that these charts can be used to think about what is desired cognitive levels and the cognitive process and the action verbs. So this is something that a faculty member has sent me when she applied this to her course, and I found this pretty good. You can see that it is this is how it is done by someone when practically used. So likewise, wherever apply was supposed to be the desired cognitive level, I'll use this chart, apply those things. Likewise, I'll keep building this chart further, right? Analyze wherever analyze is there, evaluate is there, I will use it. And now I'm done with my this chart. Uh, have some of you been able to complete this exercise side by side? Uh, in the meantime, I'll just address a few more questions. Professor Anil Kumar has asked, do instructions get more recognition if their students achieve higher level? Absolutely. Uh, it is basically the continuous improvement part. Some of the gaps that you have found in the learning process of the students may be associated with the instruction design, and the teacher will have to then prove that because of the changes that I have done in the way I'm teaching, improvement has happened in the learning of the students. Uh, but every time this may not be the related with the instructions of the teachers or the way the teacher teaches. There may be some, let's say, a laboratory doesn't have a modern tool which your students are supposed to learn. So the investment has not been done by the institute to buy that kind of modern tool or the equipment in the laboratory or the workshop. Then if you find that constantly some learning is missing, it may be attributed to those other infrastructural related issues, the learning environment related issues, and sometimes it is beyond the teacher's capacity. Your instructions may be fabulous, but and some learning is still lacking because you are unable to take them, the students, to the apply level or analyze level, because there is no right support by the as an infrastructural support there, right? So yes, but if anything that is in the control of the teacher, it is basically then the performance of the teacher that matters in terms of in regards to the designing of the instructions. Dr. Shilpa has asked, can the framework be used for both formative as well as summative? Absolutely, this is useful for all types of assessments. Yes, but since we are a constituent college, summative assessments are done by the university. It doesn't matter. Actually, in implementing the outcomes-based education, summative exams are not useful in terms of getting the feedback of the learning of the students. So formative assessments are very important than the summative assessment. Summative assessments have its own purpose, and that is to qualify or disqualify the students, which is a traditional method of educational assessment, and that has to continue because it has got its own importance. But don't mix that summative assessment into our process of outcomes based education. The formative assessments are completely in your control, and you are free to apply this model to the exams which are in your control. Next question is about, does the PO and the CO, okay, POs and the CO should be defined by the authority? Yes, actually, somebody other than the teacher who is not experienced enough in the designing of the COPO should be doing this job. Some subject matter expertise, so expert or the program designer, it's there. If these kind of roles do not exist today in the education institutions, I'm pretty sure that this will evolve over a period of time. and there will be people who are supposed to think about OB only, or program designing, curriculum designing. That will become the specialty, kind of, special skills that the teachers can add to their skill sets, and perform those specific roles in the organizations later on. In my opinion, IQAC, the internal quality assurance cell, will carry a bigger, purpose, meaning, authority in the future, and they probably will have people who will have better insight into how to design the kind of, these course outcomes, and etc. Right. So actually, Professor Dipendran has mentioned that teaching design should be commonized, or yeah, that's fine. Actually, those who are, let's say, experienced enough to design the instructions, obviously it should be done by the teachers. The stage of the classroom is the stage of the performance by the teacher, and they have to control that. So, but what what should be there has to be a framework which is given to the teachers. You may be experienced teacher, but there are some new entrants in the teaching field, not so experienced. They will require some framework to begin with. But even the experienced teachers who are teaching some complex topics, they must know why they are teaching this course, why this course exists, because it is related to some program outcomes, and hence to make the students achieve those program outcomes, the teacher will have to come out with the instruction strategies which are suitable for the students to achieve those core program outcomes or the course outcomes. And that if the teacher has an ability to do that, obviously it's it's very welcome sign, in my opinion. Only thing is the teacher has to prove that yes, because of these steps, this is how the students performance is changing to the positive side. Absolutely. So now let's go to the next stage. So progressively we build this table. I believe that those who are working with me, they are also able to kind of at least complete one row here. And now what is magically we are going to come out with the course outcome statements. So for that I'm going to actually go to the table here, which will tell us how to design the course outcomes. So typically the course outcomes are the statements which have four components like action, knowledge, condition, and criteria. Let me go back to action. This action verb is already identified by us: apply, clarify, classify, right? This is the step which we have achieved in our course blueprint model, and we have identified a proper action verb there. Knowledge, the knowledge content, the subtopics, right, which we have identified a separate chunk of the knowledge that we will deliver, is the knowledge component that is associated with this statement. Third is the condition of the performance. So typically when you are expecting the student to be at apply, analyze, right, kind of cognitive levels, you have to define what is the condition of the performance and the criteria. If you are assessing the student to be at, let's say, analyze or evaluate level, you have to add the criteria for uh, making the statement completely aligned with the expectations of the instructions and the questions that you want to ask. So because you want to ask a question to see whether the students are able to reach the evaluate level of the cognition. That is the reason you are asking the question. And then what outcome you are designing also has to address that you are assessing the student to be at evaluate level. So that's why you have to define some criteria. Generally action and knowledge, these two components are good enough for the cognitive levels such as remember, understand, and apply. But condition and criteria will make your statements very powerful, especially when you are assessing the student for the analyze, evaluate, and create levels. So now you can see that these are the action verbs which you have already identified, right? And subtopics are the descriptions of the knowledge dimensions, knowledge component of the outcomes, course outcomes. So I'm eliminating something that is not useful anymore. I'm moving this towards the subtopics, and then add these other remaining components of the course outcome statements. So I have the action verb. I have to define what is to be the label for these knowledge that I'm delivering, whether any criteria or condition is required. So very easily you can come out with the course outcomes which are written in the raw form like this. You can further verbalize that further, use it, and then make it human readable, and clear to everybody who is reading and making a sense out of it. But primarily this process will give you raw statements of course outcomes. So you'll be able to design the course outcome in this manner, and then use this design now to eliminate the alignment of the three components essentially. So when you are able to, let's say, let me go back here, uh, to come out with, let me go back here. Yeah. Okay. So this is the earlier chart, which the one purpose of the first purpose of this chart is to design the course outcomes. The second purpose of this chart is to design the questions. So if you know that, okay, these are the action verbs, then you can define the questions also which begin with these action verbs typically, right? So that is the reason I'm saying that it is useful for both. So the the template which I have given there has the rightmost column uh, is given there for you to come out with the questions now, which are mapped to these action verbs which are defined there, right? So uh, let's see now how the misalignment could be easily. I mean, I have already communicated that to you, how the misalignment could be avoided in the instructions, outcomes, and the assessments. The assessment part, let's now cover that quickly. So, if you are designing outcomes-based assessment, what you require is basically a definition of measurable and observable outcomes, which we have already done. You require to understand what are the knowledge dimensions associated with those knowledge blocks or the chunks of the knowledge that you are delivering, which we have already done, right? And then you have to have the assess. You have to find out how many outcomes are supposed to be measured in what level of their uh, stage in the term that they are going through. So some kind of strategy that you require. So in the outcomes based education, there is a greater emphasis on the assessments, primarily because it gives the feedback to both the stakeholders, the teacher and the learner, both. More and more formative assessments are required. The importance of the summative assessment is less in the context of outcomes based education. And there is a lot of autonomy to be given to the teacher. So every time a formative assessment to be taken by the teacher need not go through the rigor of the formal process of examinations. The teacher should be given the authority to conduct the exam anytime, to collect the feedback about the learning process. And the teacher may not want to share these marks with the formal exam process or the term work, because it is only privately conducted assessment by the teacher to get the feedback about the learning process. So that is the kind of autonomy should be given. So that's the reason of defining the framework is important, is a process of the program designer. Once that is done, implementation of this framework, it requires creativity, and that is left with the teachers. So a teacher who is a good OB teacher, then the teacher will always think about the learning outcomes. What do I want the students to know when they leave this course? What instruction, what kind of activities in and out of the class will reinforce my learning outcomes and prepare the students for the assessments? So that will go into the learning instruction strategies. And the assessments, what kind of tasks will reveal whether the students have achieved the learning outcomes I have identified. So these are the three questions the teacher has to ask and it should be part of your course designing also. I'm sorry, the course plan also. Then we have talked about this concept, right? Progressively we have to expect more and more activities related to apply, analyze, evaluate, and create psychomotor and metacognitive tasks. uh, and we have also now seen this idea of how progressively you want to take the students from lower to higher order of activities. So generally, if you look at the your program, initially you are delivering more and more factual knowledge, conceptual knowledge, less procedural. Later on, the the portion of the factual conceptual reduces, and more procedural, more metacognitive knowledge is being delivered. So naturally, accordingly, the questions also have to be asked, and the percentage of the questions towards analyze, apply, analyze should go up progressively, and lesser questions to address the remembering and understanding and applying. So that is the idea here. Generally, the alignment of the teaching and the learning and the outcomes have to be achieved. So now, if you look at the cognitive processes and the knowledge dimensions here, X and Y, you'll have 24 such combinations. So you have to find out which combination you are addressing, and accordingly, you have to design those questions. So if you have, let's say, an outcome which is such as this: examine the concurrency control based on the timestamp ordering and locking techniques. If this is the course outcome, then you can see whether you, if you are teaching, if this course outcome requires the student to be taught procedural knowledge, then at what level of the procedural knowledge you want the student to take at, whether analyze and evaluate is required. Accordingly, these questions could be designed here. So this chart can be used by you for every course outcome to come out with the kind of questions related to these two dimensions. And finally, if you think about every course outcome, if you are able to see the relationship of this course outcome with program outcomes, what topic it is related to, what subtopics it is related to, knowledge dimension, cognitive process, assessment method, learning domain, and types of the questions that you are likely to design to measure the outcome here, will give you a complete alignment of what uh, outcome you are measuring, what type of assessments you are going to conduct, and what instructions you are supposed to design to help the student achieve these outcomes. Is a kind of alignment that you can achieve by creating a map, blueprint, I would say, a blueprint of each outcome like this. So that is about outcomes designing the outcomes focused questions. There are Inpods actually is doing some a lot of work in this area, and there are technology that is developed by us to help you design the outcomes focused questions. Is actually, this is a way to build those question banks, which will have questions mapped to various knowledge levels or the course outcomes, and then essentially the complexity levels, topics in the units. And if you want to have certain percentage of the questions spread in those assessments, you can define how many, what is the percentage of the questions you want, associated marks and complexity level, types of questions, topics in the units you want to cover. And then based on that, you can actually use this template and bring in the consistency in the way the questions are being asked in various assessments. And that kind of predictability can be achieved by you, if, for all the programs, all the courses. The kind of templates and the patterns are being used are not missing out on their mappings of the questions with the outcomes and the that outcomes of this question, the course. And that's how actually exactly you are able to then control the overall organization's quality of the question papers that are being designed. And then at the end of the day, you'll be able to print a question paper and either use it online for online exams or offline exams, depending upon what you want to do. So